3D Elephant Mom and Baby Acrylic Nail Art Tutorial by Hotpinkzebrapolish.
Hello everyone! In today's video I'm going to be continuing my Earth Days series. So in today's video I'm going to be sculpting the thumbnail, which is an elephant mom and baby. So I hope you like this design, and don't forget to check out the rest of the designs in this series and click subscribe to see my future videos as well.
So I'm going to begin by creating an overlay with blue acrylic, and in this series, so for all of the nails, the background colors that I'm using are the same colors that I used on the earth nail, just to sort of tie them together. So that's why I'm using blue, but otherwise a lot of different colors would look really pretty in the background. I would just stay away from anything that's gray, white, black, or silver, but anything else would look good. So now I'm going to be encasing that blue acrylic with a thin layer of clear, and when you're doing 3D art, I try to keep the nails a little thinner than I would otherwise, just because that 3D art is going to add some strength, and it's also going to make the nail thicker in the end. So if you have it thinner in the beginning, it just keeps the whole thing a little more sleek, and it doesn't waste so much either. So just encase that, and then I'm just going to lightly file it with a 180 grit file to remove any of those imperfections and thin out the sides just a pinch. And then I'm going to be buffing it with a 240 grit padded buffer to remove the scratches that this file left behind. And my poster putty is obviously not as sticky as it should be, since that nail keeps jumping ship. Yeah, it's always interesting. Okay, so now I'm going to be applying a layer of gel sealer, and this is going to create a nice slick surface and make the 3D art not necessarily easier to apply, but it applies differently. So now I'm going to be applying my gray acrylic as the base for my elephant shape, and it's sort of a very minimal hourglass shape is kind of how it looks. So it's a little bit pinched in where his eyes are going to be, and then I'm just going to take my brush and create little divots in where the trunks are. And as you're watching this, and I'm doing the same thing for the baby now, I'm going to just mention the differences between just putting the 3D art on top of the acrylic, or if you put a layer of that gel sealer in the middle. When you put gel sealer in the middle, it's a really slick feeling, and so the acrylic can move around a lot. And so you could just, even after it's almost 100% set, you could just wipe it off. Once it's set, it's going to be on there nice and sturdy, but it also makes it so that you can clean up edges really easy, which is nice when you're doing something intricate like this elephant, how you can just swipe your brush off and it leaves no residue from the acrylic that you're putting on top. But if you're doing something like a flower, when you do flowers, you put down the petal and then you let them set and then you press them out. It's not going to work nearly as well, because you're going to be pressing it out and it's kind of going to slide all over in the beginning, and it's not going to adhere as well, which makes pressing it out more difficult, if that all makes sense. But when you're doing something like this elephant, where you're not pressing things out as much in that sense, then it is definitely, I think, an advantage to put that nice shiny layer in the middle. Anyways, so I sculpted my mama's ears, and then you want to make the very tops of her ears thicker, because they got that really skin, the lower part is mostly just like a skin layer, but then at the top that's where the muscular structure is that controls her ears. So you want that to be thicker. And I'm going to thicken up her forehead and then down towards her trunk, but I'm going to leave the area where her tusks are, that first layer that we did. I'll work on that later. So now I'm going to be working on her trunk, and I want her trunk to sort of wrap around her baby's face like she's holding her or giving her a kiss or something. So I'm just going to carry that acrylic down and around a little bit. So now I'm going to work on the baby again. I like to go back and forth when I'm doing something like this, because if you do one in entirety and then you do the other one, they're not going to look like they match as well. They're not going to look like they go together. Maybe they will, but it's just a little better and a little easier if you go back and forth and do the same steps. So if you do mom's head, then you do some of the baby, and then you go back and forth and make sure that they stay the same all the way through. I think that's a better way to go about it. So I sculpted out my baby's ears, and now I'm going to be working on her trunk and thickening up her forehead. And she doesn't have any tusks, so you don't have to worry about those. And so her head is more of a sphere shape instead of that hourglass. And so yeah, and I'm going to curl her trunk up so that they're meeting in the middle, just like so. And when you're doing 3D art, I like to always grab a bead and then take the acrylic out of the back of my brush. This gives you a really sturdy, a little bit thicker acrylic, so it's not so runny, and you can control it easier, and it's not going to run and slide where you don't want it to be, and it just makes it slightly easier. And so that's that's how I like to keep my acrylic. Also, when you're using colored acrylic, if you don't take the liquid out of the back of the brush, even if you don't do it at all, your color is going to not be uniform. It's going to be lighter in some places and darker in some places. So taking that extra liquid out makes your acrylic easier to work with and also a better color payoff. So now on the mom, I'm going to be adding her trunks with the tiniest beads of white you can imagine, and then just stretching those out into that nice pointed shape. And then again, with really super small beads of black, I'm going to add her eyes and then the baby's eyes as well. And when I'm sculpting someone's eyes, I like to make them larger than I want them to be in the end, and then I like to take the original color and place that over the top just like this and make an eyelid. That adds so much small detail. It's amazing, and it looks so much better in the end because it actually looks like she's got an eyelid and it's not just these floating bulging eyes as it would have been if you didn't add these eyelids. So if you take nothing else away from this tutorial, give yourself your 3D art. If it's something that's got eyes, give it eyelids, please. It helps so much and you'll be amazed, and it's so easy. And then I'm going to thicken up her trunk just a little bit. And so as I'm doing this, you may not need to thicken up her trunk. You just have to look and see if it's got the right shape. And if you want to, one thing I would recommend is taking, just Googling some pictures of elephants and looking at an elephant from the side view to see how the curve of her trunk should look. And that's going to help you out when you're sculpting it, so that you're not just doing this without, blindly. You have some frame of reference to know how all these shapes go together. And yeah, so there you go. And so now I'm going to be doing the same on the baby, thickening up the trunk just a pinch and then giving her some eyelids. And the other thing, when you're doing that gray acrylic over the black for the eyelids, make sure that black is set 100%, otherwise it'll bleed. So then with really wet black acrylic, I'm just going to almost use it like watercolor paint in their ears, just to give that a little bit, make it look like it's farther back in. That's going to make your 3D artwork look even more 3D without adding any more depth or thickness. So then with watered down black acrylic paint, I'm going to be adding just wrinkles down her forehead. So I painted those on and then I pressed them out with my finger just because I thought they got a little bit too intense. I'm going to add some more details on just making sure that her trunk is all defined, and her tusks, and then in her ears. And the more details like this you add, the better it's going to look in the end. So I'm also going to outline her eyelids and then repeat all these steps for the baby. And then I'm going to add just a couple white highlights using the same process as I did with the black on her forehead, ears, and tusks. Apply some matte top coat over the 3D art just to protect that paint. And then you are all set. So don't forget to check out the rest of the tutorials in this series. I hope you like this design, and please share any recreations with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I would love to see them, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!